Okay, then, joined now by Chelsea from Union FS. Mate, thanks for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Just about recovered from my stag do that was mentioned on last week's pod with Jordan. It was a bit of a struggle of a week, if I'm honest, but I'm about right now.
Yeah, well,
he had a nap. He had a nap, Jake. Saturday afternoon, he had a nap.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, just after the Duisburg 1860 Munich game. I'd seen enough, to be honest. I needed a little bit of a kick.
You just didn't want to see the Chelsea game either, did you?
yeah. And I avoided all highlights of that, to be fair. Still made it out longer than you did that night, George, to be fair.
That's true. That's very true. But I had Mr. S or Mr. J, whatever we call him these days, in tow.
Yeah, fair.
Well, look, mate, what we want to talk about today is, well, a few things really regarding the club and Union FS, because it has been something that, well, there's been quite a few things rumbling on for a little while now. So we thought it'd be good to get someone on to talk about it and get your views and a little bit more information on what is happening from your side. I mean, is my understanding right? We're about to have a survey about the singing section, which you've had this season, and about whether it's going to continue or not. So yeah, where are we at the moment with the singing section, and what have you been told about this?
Yeah, that's right, Jake. So I think so there's two surveys about to come out or be released by the club. They may well have been released by the time the pod actually drops. The premise of the survey is obviously just to have a understanding of how people within the section and outside of the section view how it's gone this year, in terms of like whether or not it's added to the atmosphere, made the atmosphere worse, whether there's been any other issues around sort of like fans' behaviour or whatever during the season so far. As what we would say from a UNFS perspective is that obviously we feel like the section's gone well, but could be a lot better if we weren't watching absolute dross for the vast majority of the season. I think if the communication from the outset from the club was a little bit better, that might have helped things a little bit. Obviously, with people being kicked out of their seats, etc., I feel like that probably put us on the back foot a little bit. But I still strongly believe it's better than it would have been this season had the section not been in place. So I do feel like we're moving in the right direction. Strongly believe, obviously, that this is starting to become a platform for us going forward, and the club obviously exploring quite substantially safe standing, and what we want to see from them in that regard is probably more of a QPR model than maybe just adding a rail in front of the seats like we have seen some away games this year in the Premier League. And yeah, so there's plenty there for us to kind of basically work with. But clearly we've had a few issues over the last month or so that probably set the group back a little bit, set the section back a little bit as well.
Yeah, is there a chance then that we're not going to have this next season if the survey goes a particular way?
Well, I think it was always badged the section as a 1-year trial.
Yeah,
I think it would be pretty difficult for the club to renege on that at the end of the season. I probably think it would cause a lot more problems than it's worth by actually saying, okay, well, we move everyone back out of that section and have the people that were there beforehand move back in. However, it's not within the realms of possibility that could happen. But I think it would be a big backward step.
George?
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, I know Chelsea quite well, obviously, but I'm not necessarily, I suppose, a contributing member to UFS or a fully fledged member, but obviously support what the group does and then sit slightly behind. So I just want to know what the reasoning was with the club that they moved it to where it was in the first place. And then touching on the Tottenham game, because I think I mentioned it the other week, I couldn't really see anything that had gone particularly wrong. And I've just checked, actually, I just Googled it. But that was our first home win since October. So you're knocking on for 5 months.
Yeah.
And you beat Tottenham 4-1. So obviously you're going to have a bit of a good atmosphere with a singing section that you've designated. And then there seemed to be a bit of trouble. So It just seems a bit of an odd one.
Yeah. So firstly, on the sort of the location of the section, so I think that was born directly out of what us working with the club, identifying areas where we could move closer to the pitch, hopefully have a bigger area, because obviously previously where we were probably only the back 10 rows, if that, and that just wasn't enough for us to be able to actually make sure that the atmosphere is carrying around the stadium. So moving slightly closer to the front, setting up where we did, felt it gave us an opportunity to do that and potentially move on from that point as and when safe standing eventually is introduced. So that's that question. Then the second one on the incidents at the Spurs game. So yeah, like you say, George, really positive day from a footballing sense. We've not had many of those this season. Do feel there's a fair amount of like boisterousness in that area that particular day. Also interesting developments from the club at the outset of that was there was a couple of police officers stationed at the front of the section filming the area, which hadn't happened before. I think there was a little bit of ill feeling around that, and whether or not actually that was actually anything to do with us or not is another matter. A few small minor indiscretions that day that were perhaps not dealt with well on either side, to be frank. And I think the resulting from that has obviously been some bans issued to UNFS members. We obviously feel they were a bit out of line with what we would expect. They're like things that you probably see countless times across stadiums, like every single match, which it feels like we're being held to a slightly higher account than other fans, perhaps, which is it leaves a bit of a bitter pill to taste, really, given the relationship we've had actually built up with the club since 2013. So yeah, a bit of a tough month or so, really, for the group.
I mean, the atmosphere at the ground, I think, is something that has been a bit of a sticky point, I suppose, since we won the league or the Champions League. But like you say, you've worked with them for 10 years now. So it seems like, they're kind of, obviously there was the trials in the cup, which were over the other side of the stadium in the family end. And then it just seems they're kind of, from an outsider's kind of perspective, there's a lot of imagery on the website, on the social feeds. And everyone wants the atmosphere to be better. So it seems like the relationship, obviously it's difficult for both sides to manage the relationship, but I don't get why it can't be best for both, for the club going forward in terms of the atmosphere. Because at the minute, like you said earlier, the football's terrible. At least if we had like a half decent atmosphere where we're losing 1-0 at home to Villa next week, then that's a kind of a minor positive.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have been part of the starting of the group if I didn't feel like it had a major impact on how the team perform. Atmosphere is integral to like the team's performance. You can argue it till the cows come home and got what comes first, chicken egg situation around, well, the players have to perform for the atmosphere to be there. I don't really believe that, if I'm massively honest. Like, the fans can drive for better performance from the players, and we have to be there for the rest for the team from now to the end of the season. And I think that's we need to be supported from that respect from the club, to give us that sort of a little bit of leeway with certain things like waving flags, standing. They already sort of allow us to stand in that area pretty uninhibited, in comparison to certain areas of the ground as well. So I feel like, we have been a little bit of, I guess, of course, had some problems over the last sort of month or so where we would have liked to have avoided them. When in reality, what we need is the whole group, the whole section, the whole stadium really getting behind the team, regardless of your thoughts on the manager, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to generate sort of an atmosphere that's going to help us with our home form, which over the last 18 months has been the worst in the league of remaining teams that haven't already been relegated, probably.
Yeah, Chelsea. So what do you think the plan is going forward? Obviously, you've had some sticky moments recently that ideally wouldn't have happened, and you'd want the club to support you a bit more in this. What are you lot trying to do? Because I'm reading a little bit of negativity as well, which I think is unfair on you. Like the whole purpose of the atmosphere you're trying to create is, there's no negative to that, because otherwise there is nothing. There's no other atmosphere in the ground. So, have you got what you're going to try and do to navigate through it?
I think first and foremost, we kind of stay to our sort of overriding principles, which is support the team at all costs. Really, we know we've had the same sort of comments since we started, like that are negative. People are just not going to like us. Some people have taken that view since day one. That's fine. That's their own prerogative. You get it anywhere in England. It's a bit of an alien concept to a lot of fans, like Homestyle fanatics. It's like Crystal Palace get absolutely hammered by people, but in reality, they've driven a pretty good atmosphere at Selhurst Park for 20 years almost now. We know that we're in a sort of similar boat in terms of actually polarizing opinion. We've got to continue that. We've also got to remind ourselves of the, like you say, Rick, the overwhelming, I would say, fan base are positive about the fact and understanding of the fact that without the group there, actually the atmosphere would be completely flat. That was part of the point of what we did against Arsenal. We didn't want to go to that game and be silent. That was the last thing that we want, any of us want to do. We're there to support the team. We had to make a point about the sort of what we felt was pretty draconian like punishment towards a couple of our members at that point in time, and we stand by that sort of decision making. But equally, we know between now and the end of the season we have to make as much as a difference as we possibly can. Continue to push the bits on sort of actually the fact that the singing section has been better than it for the atmosphere in terms of like creating atmosphere than if it wasn't there this season. Push people to hopefully sort of back that when we actually do this, when the survey comes out from the club, and make sure that actually we still have it next year. We're still in a good position for when actually safe standing comes in to kind of grow and be a central force for the atmosphere that would come out of that sort of area if the club were to pursue that. And yeah, just to continue to make sure that we're kind of at the forefront of the atmosphere on a day-to-day basis, really.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is going to sound silly, but I do think that between now and the end of the season, we've got however many games left to save our club from relegation. Everyone's got to make an effort now. It doesn't matter, whether you're part of the singing section or not, or what your feelings are. We've got to make a difference.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we've got to take our responsibility and for what happens.
Yeah, that's right. I think that what we have done over the last few games, obviously notwithstanding the fact that the Arsenal game we stayed silent, but in the majority of in all games really, we've made sure that we've been with the team for as long as possible. I think there was a slight bit of aggro towards the end of the Chelsea game when it became apparent that we weren't going to get anything out of that. Okay, well, where does your feeling lie with regards to the manager? That potentially is going to come out at that moment in time, irrespective of whether you're in a group or anywhere in the area, anywhere in the stadium, really. Same thing happened at Forest away. There was a lot of like sort of anti-Rodgers feeling at that point in time. You end up with a lot of blue on blue action really at the time, and it's not something that's at all ideal. But equally, if you support the team for 85 minutes and you know that the game's drifting at that point, why not vent your feelings at that point? Because the players have got to know that. The manager's got to know it, that they're not performing to the level that we want from it. And I have no issues with it, as long as you're supporting the team for the vast majority of the game until the game is gone. Then that's absolutely fine with us.
It was like I was just thinking, Charles, the Duisburg game last week. They were 2-0 down. Well, 1860 were 2-0 up away, and they ended up drawing 2-2. And at the end of the game, the 1860 players went over, and there was just nothing, was there? They didn't applaud or anything.
Yeah,
they were fuming.
Yeah, they were, and that's it. But they gave them 100% support throughout the game, and then obviously at the end they didn't particularly give them a fantastic reception off. It's a long way back from Duisburg to Munich after throwing away a 2-goal lead against probably one of the worst teams you'll ever see.
All right, top man. Chelsea, was there anything else you wanted to add or speak about, mate?
No. Cheers for having us on, lads. Appreciate it. And anytime you want any sort of atmosphere related discussion, just let me know.
All right, top stuff. Well, look, we'll look out for that survey and encourage everybody to, if you've got an opinion on it, to get involved in it and make sure the club knows how you feel about it, and hopefully kind of moving forward, it'll be a better thing for everyone. But mate, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, cheers, lads. All right, take care.
Top man. Cheers, Chelsea.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.